Chapter 8. The Mental Shift. The third month had arrived, and with it came a new kind of unease that Ash had never known before. The physical changes, though unsettling, had been something she could see, observe, even grudgingly accept as they progressed. But now, something much deeper was happening. Something far more invasive than the way her body had betrayed her. She sat, cross-legged, near the edge of a quiet river, watching the rippling water as it flowed downstream. The sunlight glinted off the surface, casting shimmering reflections that danced in the air. It was peaceful, serene even. But Ash wasn't at peace. Not anymore. Pikachu sat beside her, its tail flicking back and forth as it eyed the water with curiosity. Ash smiled softly, reaching out to scratch behind Pikachu's ears, but her focus remained on the river. Water had never been something she had thought much about before. She had always been more of a fire and electricity person. Fast, aggressive, always charging headfirst into battle. But now, as she stared at the flowing water, she felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. It wasn't just the sight of the river that soothed her. It was the way it moved, the way it adapted. It flowed around obstacles, found the path of least resistance. It was strategic, patient. It's just like Misty, she thought, the realization hitting her like a bolt of lightning. A shiver ran down her spine, and she quickly tore her gaze away from the water, her pulse quickening. What was happening to her? Why was she suddenly drawn to water? Why did it feel so familiar? So, right? Ash clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she tried to push the thoughts aside. But they wouldn't go away. They clung to her, just like the transformation had, gnawing at the edges of her mind until she couldn't ignore them anymore. Her body had changed, completely, irrevocably. That much was obvious. But now her mind was changing too, and that terrified her in ways she couldn't even begin to explain. Ash? Misty's voice pulled her from her thoughts, and Ash looked up to see her friend approaching, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. She sat down beside Ash, her eyes briefly flicking to the river before returning to Ash's face. "You've been out here for a while," Misty said softly. "Everything okay?" Ash hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Normally, she would have brushed off Misty's concern with a smile and a joke, pretending like everything was fine. But now she wasn't so sure she could keep pretending. "I'm not sure," Ash admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something feels wrong." Misty frowned, her gaze sharpening with worry. "What do you mean? Is it your body? Are you in pain?" Ash shook her head, her fingers tightening around the grass beneath her. "No, no, it's not my body. It's my mind." Misty's expression shifted, her frown deepening as she studied Ash carefully. "What do you mean?" Ash took a deep breath, trying to steady the trembling in her hands. "I've been feeling different. I don't just mean the way I look. It's like my thoughts are changing. I'm thinking about things I never thought about before. She paused, her throat tightening with fear. "I'm starting to think like you." Misty blinked, clearly startled by the admission. "Like me?" Ash nodded, her chest tightening. Yeah. Like, I've been thinking about water-type Pokemon a lot lately. I've been drawn to them in ways I never was before. And I've been thinking about battles differently, too. I'm not charging in like I used to. I'm being cautious. I'm strategizing. It's like I'm becoming you, Misty. Not just physically, but mentally too." Misty's face paled, her eyes widening with alarm. Ash? Ash? That's that's not possible. Is it? Ash shook her head, her voice trembling. I don't know. I don't know. But it's happening. I can feel it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of the confession hanging heavily between them. Misty's hands fidgeted in her lap, her gaze drifting to the river as her mind clearly raced with thoughts. Finally, she let out a shaky breath and turned back to Ash, her eyes filled with fear. Ash? Ash? I don't know what's happening to you, but this is serious. If your mind is changing too, then we need to figure out what's going on. We can't just sit here and let this happen. Ash nodded, though deep down, she wasn't sure what there was left to figure out. The transformation had started months ago, and every time she thought it couldn't get worse, it did. First her body, now her mind. What part of her would be left when it was all over? I can feel myself slipping away, Ash whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I'm trying to hold on to who I used to be, but it's getting harder. Every day, I feel more like you and less like me. Misty bit her lip, her eyes brimming with tears. Ash, Ash, you're still you. This doesn't change who you are. You're still the same person inside. But what if I'm not? Ash asked, her voice rising with desperation. What if I'm losing myself? What if, by the end of this, I'm not Ash Ketchum anymore? What if I'm just Misty? Misty's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she couldn't seem to find the words to respond. The fear in her eyes was unmistakable, and Ash could see that her friend was just as terrified as she was. I don't know. I don't know, Misty finally whispered, her voice breaking. But I promise you, we'll figure this out. We'll find a way to stop it. Ash wanted to believe her, wanted so desperately to hold on to the hope that Misty's words offered. But the truth was, she wasn't sure there was anything left to stop. The transformation had already taken so much from her body, her identity, and now it was taking her mind, too. How much longer could she hold on before there was nothing left of Ash Ketchum? The next few days passed in a blur of confusion and fear. Ash found herself constantly second, guessing her thoughts, wondering if they were truly her own or if they were part of the transformation. Every time she noticed something new, a preference for certain foods, a shift in how she approached a battle, an interest in things she had never cared for before, her heart would race with panic. She spent hours in front of the mirror, staring at the reflection that looked so much like Misty. It was eerie, unsettling, to see herself reflected back as someone else. Her long red hair, her delicate features, her slender body, they all belonged to Misty now. And every time she looked, it felt like a little piece of Ash Ketchum disappeared. Misty, for her part, tried to stay positive, tried to keep Ash's spirits up. She took her on more shopping trips, insisting that new clothes and a fresh look would help her feel more in control. But Ash knew that Misty was just as scared as she was. One afternoon, after another long day of shopping, Ash found herself standing in front of the full-length mirror in their temporary camp. She was wearing one of the new outfits Misty had picked out for her, a pair of tight denim shorts, a white crop top, and a pair of strappy sandals. It was a cute, casual look, one that Misty had said suited her perfectly. But as Ash stared at her reflection, she couldn't help but feel a sense of dread settle in her stomach. The girl in the mirror wasn't Ash. She was Misty. And no matter how hard Ash tried, she couldn't see herself anymore. Hey! Hey, Ash! Misty's voice called from outside the tent. You ready? We're leaving soon. Ash tore her gaze away from the mirror, her heart pounding in her chest. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself before stepping outside, where Misty was waiting with Pikachu. The two of them had planned to head into town for supplies, but as they began walking, Ash couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over her. Everything felt wrong, like she was living someone else's life, wearing someone else's skin. They walked in silence for a while, the tension between them palpable. Finally, Misty spoke, her voice quiet and hesitant. Ash? Ash? I've been thinking. Maybe we should go see Professor Oak again. Maybe he can help. Ash shook her head, her jaw tight. I don't think there's anything he can do. Misty. He already told us the transformation was irreversible. I know, but... Misty trailed off, her eyes filled with worry. I just feel like there has to be something we're missing. There has to be a way to stop this before it gets any worse. Ash's chest tightened, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. What if there isn't? What if this is just who I am now? Misty stopped walking, turning to face Ash with a look of desperation in her eyes. Ash? Ash? Don't say that. You're not gone. You're still here. But for how long? Ash asked, her voice trembling. Every day, I feel more like you and less like me. I can feel my thoughts changing, my preferences shifting. It's like I'm becoming you, Misty. And I don't know how to stop it. Misty's face crumpled, tears welling up in her eyes. Ash? Ash? I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted you to go through this. Ash's heart ached at the sight of her friend's tears, and for a moment, she felt a surge of guilt. Misty wasn't to blame for this. None of this was her fault, but the fear and confusion were overwhelming, and Ash didn't know how to cope. I know it's not your fault, Ash said softly, her voice thick with emotion. But I'm scared. Misty. I'm scared that I'm losing myself. Misty stepped forward, wrapping her arms around Ash in a tight embrace. You're not losing yourself, she whispered fiercely. You're still Ash. And no matter what happens, I'm going to be here for you. We'll get through this together. Ash closed her eyes, resting her head on Misty's shoulder as she tried to hold back the tears that threatened to spill over. The weight of everything was crushing, and despite Misty's reassurances, Ash couldn't help but wonder if she was already too far gone. The days continued to pass, and with each one, Ash felt the mental shift growing stronger. She found herself thinking more like Misty, reacting to situations the way Misty would. In battle, she was strategic and cautious, favoring water-type Pokemon more and more. She even found herself drawn to the same kinds of clothes and hobbies that Misty enjoyed. It was subtle at first, small things, like noticing a new water-type Pokemon and feeling an inexplicable urge to catch it. But over time, the changes became more pronounced. She started thinking about things like hair care, something she had never cared about before. She found herself enjoying long baths, experimenting with different shampoos and conditioners, just like Misty did. And then there were the emotions. Ash had always been quick to react, her temper flaring easily in the heat of battle or when things didn't go her way. But now, she found herself more patient, more level-headed. She was starting to think like Misty in ways that went beyond just strategy. She was becoming Misty in every way. It was terrifying. One evening, as Ash sat by the campfire, her thoughts swirling with confusion and fear, Misty sat down beside her, her expression serious. Ash? Ash? Can I ask you something? Misty said quietly. Ash glanced at her, nodding. Yeah. What is it? Misty hesitated, clearly struggling with how to phrase her question. Finally, she looked Ash in the eye, her voice trembling slightly. Do you still feel like you? Ash's heart skipped a beat, her chest tightening with fear. She knew what Misty was asking. It was the same question she had been asking herself for weeks now. I don't know. I don't know, Ash admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm trying to hold on, but it's hard. Sometimes I feel like I'm still me, but other times, I don't know who I am anymore. Misty's face crumpled, and she reached out, taking Ash's hand in hers. Ash, Ash, I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something to help you. Ash squeezed Misty's hand, her own emotions threatening to overwhelm her. You've already helped more than you know. Misty, I don't know how I'd get through this without you. Misty smiled sadly, her eyes filled with unshed tears. You're not alone in this, Ash. Oh, we'll figure it out. Ash nodded, though the doubt still lingered in her mind. The transformation had taken so much already. Her body, her identity, and now, her mind. How much longer could she hold on before there was nothing left of Ash Ketchum? As the fire crackled softly beside them, Ash stared into the flames, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. The mental shift was subtle, but it was there, creeping in at the edges of her consciousness. And with every passing day, it grew harder to fight, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. Not while Misty was still by her side.